hands where I can see them. What are you doing on the course?
Good morning, officer. I'm here to play golf. I checked in at the pro shop 10 minutes ago.
Yeah? You don't look like you belong here. We've had vandalism. Step over here now.
Officer, I'm
face down.
Coast Guard
now.
officer.
In the next few hours on that perfect California morning, a white police sergeant will draw his gun on a black man wearing full Coast Guard dress blues, force him face down on the famous Pebble Beach Fairway, and ignore every piece of official identification right in front of his eyes. That sergeant will later stand in open court, admit under oath that he threatened a federal agent with deadly force for no legal reason, accept probation plus a $25,000 fine, and get suspended without pay for 6 months while his department quietly retrains the entire shift. Meanwhile, the man he humiliated, a decorated rescue swimmer who saved dozens of lives at sea, will walk away not broken, but promoted to chief petty officer with full honors and the quiet satisfaction of seeing real accountability. This is the kind of story that shows exactly how power can go wrong, how one bad decision can cost a career, and how staying calm under pressure can turn injustice into lasting change. So if you care about fairness, qualified immunity, or what happens when someone in uniform meets someone else in uniform, you need to stick around until the very end. Subscribe right now and hit the bell if stories exposing real abuse of power hit different for you. We drop these every week and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been treated unfairly by someone in power simply because of the way you looked? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Tyrone Brown was born on June 12, 1985, in a modest neighborhood of Oakland, California. From the moment he took his first steps, people around him noticed something special, a natural calm, a genuine kindness that made strangers feel safe. His father worked double shifts as an auto mechanic, his mother as a home health aide for elderly patients. They taught Tyrone that real strength is quiet, that respect is earned by how you treat people when no one is watching. As a little boy, he would wake up early to help his mom carry groceries up 3 flights of stairs for their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Washington. In elementary school, he organized weekend cleanups of the local park, picking up trash with his own small hands while other kids played video games. By middle school, Tyrone was already 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with a warm smile that lit up any room. Teachers wrote notes home saying he was the student every parent hopes their child becomes. He never got into fights. Instead, he stepped between bullies and their targets, using his size and steady voice to de-escalate. On the swim team, he broke 3 school records. But what coaches remembered most was how he stayed after practice to teach the younger kids proper breathing techniques, never charging a dime. Tyrone doesn't just swim, he lifts everyone else up, one coach wrote in his yearbook. High school brought more of the same excellence. Straight-A student, captain of the swim team, volunteer tutor for kids struggling with math. Summers he worked at the community pool teaching free swim safety classes to children from low-income families. At graduation in 2003, the principal called him the heart of our senior class. 18 years old and already carrying the weight of everyone's hopes, Tyrone knew exactly where he belonged in the United States Coast Guard. Boot camp was brutal, but Tyrone thrived. He graduated top of his class in Rescue Swimmer School, a program with a washout rate over 60%. His first assignment was out of San Francisco. Within 2 years, he had already saved 4 people from a sinking sailboat in 12-foot swells. The citation read, "Petty Officer Brown displayed extraordinary courage and composure under life-threatening conditions." By 2010, he was the go-to rescue swimmer for the entire Pacific area. One stormy night in November, he jumped from a helicopter into 40-degree water and pulled 12 fishermen to safety one by one, his own body temperature dropping dangerously low. When the last man was aboard, he simply smiled, teeth chattering, and said, "Glad I could help, sir." Promotions came steadily because his commanders trusted him completely. In 2015, he made Petty Officer First Class. In 2018, he received the Coast Guard Commendation Medal for leading a boarding team that seized $4.2 million in cocaine from a smuggling vessel without a single shot fired. All because Tyrone talked the crew into surrendering peacefully. Off-duty, he never stopped giving back. Every Saturday morning, he coached a youth football team in Oakland, teaching not just plays but respect, discipline, and how to walk away from trouble. He and his wife Maria, high school sweethearts, had 2 children. Jamal, 10, who wanted to be a pilot, and Aisha, 7, who loved drawing pictures of her dad in uniform. Family photos always showed Tyrone on the floor playing dolls with Aisha or helping Jamal with homework, never too tired, never raising his voice. Colleagues described him the same way everywhere he went. The calmest man on the team, the one who remembers your kid's birthday, the guy who will stay late to cover your shift so you can see your daughter's recital. In 20 years of service, Tyrone Brown had never received a single disciplinary note. Not one. He lived by a simple rule he told every new recruit: We wear this uniform so people can feel safe. Let's make sure they do. By early 2021, Tyrone had just finished a grueling 48-hour counter-narcotics patrol. Exhausted but proud, he decided to treat himself to something he had dreamed about since he was a teenager, a round at the legendary Pebble Beach Golf Club. He packed his clubs, put on his freshly pressed Coast Guard uniform because it felt right to represent the service even on his day off, and drove the scenic route along Highway 1. The morning of July 15, 2021 dawned bright and clear. Temperature sat at a perfect 68 degrees, a light ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and cypress trees. The famous 18th hole stretched out like a postcard, waves crashing against the cliffs below. Tyrone arrived at 10:15 a.m., checked in with a friendly smile, and headed toward the first tee, clubs over his shoulder, heart light for the first time in weeks. He had no idea that Sergeant Bob Miller was already on the property. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen someone in uniform get disrespected first and asked questions later, especially when they're literally showing proof of who they are. Type "justice" below if you believe the officer should have believed the ID the moment it was presented. Sergeant Bob Miller was born in 1978 in a small working-class suburb outside Monterey, California. From an early age, he carried himself with the kind of swagger that said he was always in control, or at least wanted everyone to think so. His father was a retired sheriff's deputy who spent dinner-table conversations recounting stories of keeping the streets safe and how you can't trust everyone you meet. Bob soaked it all in. By high school, he was the loud kid who argued with teachers, got into shoving matches on the football field, and bragged about how he'd become a cop one day to put people in their place. After community college and a stint in security at a local mall, Bob joined the Monterey County Sheriff's Office in 2002 at age 24. He started on patrol in rural areas, then moved to the more tourist-heavy zones around Carmel and Pebble Beach. Over the years, he earned a reputation, not always a good one. Colleagues described him as quick to escalate, talks down to people, and sees threats where others see nothing. His file contained 5 separate internal affairs complaints between 2008 and 2019. None resulted in serious discipline, but the pattern was clear. In 2011, during a traffic stop on Highway 1, Bob pulled over a Latino family for a broken taillight. Bodycam footage later showed him yelling at the father to stop reaching, when the man was simply grabbing his wallet for registration. Bob drew his taser, pointed it at the man's chest while the wife and 2 kids cried in the back seat. No weapon was found. The family filed a complaint. Bob received a written reprimand and 2 days unpaid suspension. He told investigators it was just protocol. 3 years later, in 2014, he responded to a noise complaint at an apartment complex. The caller was a black college student hosting a small study group. Bob banged on the door, demanded entry without a warrant, and when the student asked for his badge number, Bob shoved him against the wall, handcuffed him for resisting, and left him cuffed on the couch for 40 minutes while checking records. Nothing illegal was found. The student's lawsuit settled quietly for $18,000. Bob got another reprimand. In 2017, he pulled over a Native American man walking along the shoulder near Big Sur, claimed the man matched a description of a theft suspect. No description existed. Bob searched the man's backpack without consent, found only hiking gear, then wrote a citation for pedestrian obstruction. The ticket was dismissed in court. The man filed a civil rights claim that was dropped after the department paid $9,500. By 2019, Bob had been promoted to sergeant, partly because of seniority, partly because he volunteered for overtime no one else wanted. But the complaints kept coming. A 2020 incident involved him detaining 2 black teenagers at a beach parking lot, accusing them of looking suspicious near expensive cars. He patted them down aggressively, found nothing, released them with a warning. One teen recorded the encounter on his phone. It circulated locally but never went viral. Internal review called it poor judgment. Bob got diversity training and stayed on duty. Coworkers said Bob often made off-duty comments about certain people always causing problems and how you have to profile to survive on the street. He kept a Confederate flag sticker on his personal truck until a supervisor ordered it removed in 2018. His personnel file noted, needs improvement in de-escalation and bias awareness more than once. Yet he remained on patrol, armed with authority over anyone he encountered. On July 15, 2021, Bob was working a special assignment, extra security for a charity golf tournament at Pebble Beach. Dressed in his tan sheriff's uniform, badge gleaming, Glock on his hip, he drove the cart paths looking for anything out of place. Around 10:45 a.m., he spotted a tall black man in what looked like a military-style uniform walking toward the first tee with golf clubs. To Bob, it didn't add up. Golfers here were usually older, white, wealthy. This guy looked out of place. Reports of recent vandalism on the greens, spray paint, damaged flags were fresh in his mind. He decided this was his suspect. Bob accelerated the cart, pulled up 20 feet away, lights flashing, siren chirping once. He stepped out, hand already resting on his holster. Hands where I can see them. "What are you doing on the course?" Bob barked, voice loud enough to turn heads from nearby players. Tyrone, surprised but composed, slowly raised his empty hands, club still slung over his shoulder. "Good morning, officer. I'm here to play golf. I checked in at the pro shop 10 minutes ago." Bob's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, you don't look like you belong here. We've had vandalism. Step over here now." Tyrone kept his tone even. "Officer, I'm a United States Coast Guard Petty Officer First Class. I have my military ID right here in my pocket. May I reach for it slowly?" Bob's hand tightened on his gun. "Don't reach for anything. Get on the ground. Face down now." "Before I continue, have you ever had someone in authority refuse to even look at your proof? Drop a comment if that's happened to you or someone you know." Tyrone stayed perfectly still, hands raised, eyes locked on Bob's without defiance, just calm awareness. He knew from years at sea that panic kills faster than any wave. "Officer, I'm not reaching. My ID is in my left breast pocket. It's official federal credentials. I'm happy to let you retrieve it yourself if that makes you more comfortable." Bob's face flushed red under the brim of his hat. The breeze off the Pacific carried the distant crash of waves, but right here the air felt thick with tension. A few golfers 20 yards away had stopped mid-swing, phones already out, recording quietly. One woman whispered to her caddy, "Is that a real cop or security?" Bob took a step closer, boots crunching on the manicured grass. "You think you can talk your way out?" I said, "Get on the ground." Now, his voice cracked higher on the last word, adrenaline spiking. Tyrone lowered himself slowly to one knee, then both, palms flat on the fairway. The grass was cool and damp against his uniform sleeves. He lay face down as ordered, arms out to the sides in the classic surrender position, the same one he'd trained recruits to use during high-risk boardings. "I'm complying, officer." No resistance. Bob moved in fast, knee pressing into Tyrone's lower back harder than necessary for a man already prone and unarmed. He yanked Tyrone's right arm behind him, cuff clicking shut with a metallic snap. Then the left. The pressure on Tyrone's spine made breathing shallow, but he didn't grunt or complain. He counted breaths silently, the way he did in 40-foot swells, in for 4, hold out for 6. From the cart path, Bob radioed dispatch. "Monterey SO, this is Sergeant Miller on Pebble Beach Security Detail. I've got one in custody for suspected vandalism and resisting. Black male, approximately 6 foot, military-style uniform, claims to be Coast Guard. Sending ID for verification." He fished the wallet from Tyrone's pocket roughly, flipping it open. The gold-embossed Coast Guard ID stared back. Petty Officer First Class Tyrone Brown, photo matching the man on the ground, security clearance level listed, barcode, hologram, everything official. Bob stared at it for 3 full seconds. His jaw tightened. Instead of uncuffing, he tossed the wallet onto the grass beside Tyrone's head. "Stay down," Bob snapped. "This could be fake." "I've seen good fakes before." Tyrone spoke evenly into the turf. "It's not fake, Sergeant. Call my command post in Alameda if you need confirmation. Numbers on the back. They'll verify in under 2 minutes. Bob ignored him. He stood up, hands still on his holster, scanning the growing crowd. 3 more phones were recording now. A groundskeeper in a green Pebble Beach polo jogged over. "Everything okay here, officer?" "That gentleman checked in this morning. I saw him at the desk." Bob waved him off. "This is police business. Back up." The groundskeeper hesitated, then retreated, pulling out his own phone. Bob knelt again, leaning close to Tyrone's ear. "You think wearing a costume gives you a free pass? People like you always have an excuse." The words hung heavy, laced with something uglier than procedure. Tyrone didn't flinch. "With respect, Sergeant, this isn't a costume, and people like me have the same rights as anyone else on this course." Bob stood abruptly, face darkening further. He drew his Glock, not pointing it directly yet, but clearing leather, muzzle down. The metallic rasp of the slide was audible even over the ocean wind. Nearby golfers gasped. One man muttered, "He's pulling a gun on him." "Last chance," Bob said loudly for the audience. "You're under arrest for trespassing, vandalism, and resisting a peace officer. Anything you say can and will be used against you." Tyrone remained prone, voice steady. "I understand my rights, officer. I'm not resisting. I'm asking you to verify my identity before this escalates further." Bob hesitated for the first time. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning. The crowd had grown to 8 or 9 people, all filming. He knew the optics were bad, very bad. Finally, he keyed his radio again. "Dispatch, run this ID. Coast Guard Petty Officer Tyrone Brown, need immediate confirmation." Static crackled, then a female voice, "Copy, running now." "Stand by." 30 seconds passed, felt like 30 minutes. Dispatch came back. Sergeant Miller, ID confirmed valid. Subject is active duty USCG, no warrants, no flags. Petty Officer First Class, assigned Pacific Area. Command post verifies he's off duty today. Bob's shoulders sagged half an inch. He stared at the ID on the grass, then at the man in cuffs. The gun stayed in his hand. After another beat, he holstered it slowly. Uncuffing, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. Keys jangled. The cuffs clicked open. Tyrone sat up carefully, rubbing his wrists. No anger in his eyes, just quiet disappointment. "Thank you for checking, Sergeant." Bob didn't respond. He turned away, radioing dispatch again. Subject released, no charges at this time, but the damage was done. The videos were already uploading. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever watched someone in power double down even after proof was right in front of them? Drop your story in the comments if this hits close to home. Type justice if you think drawing a firearm should have ended his career on the spot. Tyrone stood up slowly, the cool grass leaving faint imprints on his uniform pants. His wrists burned where the cuffs had dug in, two thin red lines already forming, but his face stayed calm, the same steady expression he wore when waves were 20 feet high and lives depended on his next move. He brushed a blade of grass from his sleeve and looked Bob straight in the eye. "Sergeant, I'm not angry. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to the next guy who shows up in uniform." Bob snorted, still breathing hard, his hand hovering near his holster like he expected trouble any second. "Save the speech. You fit the description of the vandals we've been chasing. Tall, dark clothes, acting like you own the place." The words landed heavy, the racial undertone unmistakable even if he never said the quiet part out loud. "Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been searched or questioned just because you fit a description that sounded a lot like your skin color? Drop your experience in the comments, we need to hear these stories." Bob wasn't done, he pointed at Tyrone's golf bag still lying on the fairway. "Empty your pockets and open that bag, right now I'm not taking chances." Tyrone nodded without hesitation. "Of course, Sergeant. Everything is yours to check." He turned out both trouser pockets first, wallet already checked, car keys, a small pack of gum, and a folded yardage book for the course. Nothing else. Then he unzipped the golf bag himself, stepping back so Bob could look. Irons, driver, putter, 6 Titleist balls, tees, a white towel, a bottle of sunscreen, and a spare glove. Bob rummaged through every compartment, shaking the towel, rolling the balls in his palm, even sniffing the glove like it might smell like spray paint. Nothing. Not a marker, not a can, not a single thing that didn't belong to a golfer. Bob straightened up, face tight. "Still could have ditched it before I rolled up." But his voice had lost some of the earlier fire. The small crowd of golfers and staff had grown to 12 now, standing in a loose semicircle, phones lowered but eyes wide. The groundskeeper from earlier stepped forward again, voice steady. "Officer, I watched him check in at 10:15, paid the full green fee, he's a registered guest." The pro shop manager arrived moments later, jogging across the fairway with a tablet in hand. "Sergeant Miller, I have the reservation right here, Tyrone Brown, 10:30 tee time, confirmed this morning. No flags, no issues." He turned the screen so Bob could see the name, photo, ID match, and payment receipt. Bob stared at the tablet for a long second. The ocean wind whipped harder, carrying the sharp smell of salt and freshly cut grass. His radio crackled dispatch asking for status. He ignored it. "Fine, you're clear. But I'm noting this as a suspicious contact. Next time you might not be so lucky." Tyrone kept his voice low and respectful. "I understand your job is tough, Sergeant. I do the same work on the water, people's lives on the line every day. I just hope the next federal agent you meet gets a chance to show his ID before the gun comes out." Bob's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Instead, he keyed his radio. "Dispatch, suspect released on scene, ID verified through command, no charges filed at this time." His tone was clipped, angry. A black and white Monterey County Patrol SUV pulled up on the cart path. Lieutenant Karen Ellis stepped out, mid-40s, sharp uniform, no nonsense. She had been called by the pro shop the moment the first phone came out. Ellis took one look at the scene, at Tyrone's red wrists, at Bob's flushed face, and her expression hardened. "Sergeant Miller, step over here." Her voice cut through the wind. Bob walked over reluctantly. Ellis spoke low but firm. "Bodycam still rolling," Bob nodded. "Good, you're off this detail immediately. Administrative leave starting now. Turn in your weapon and badge at the station. We'll review the full incident this afternoon." Bob started to protest. "Lieutenant, he matched," Ellis cut him off. "He matched being black and wearing a uniform on a golf course he paid to play. That's not probable cause. You drew on a verified federal agent after he complied and offered ID. Go now." Bob's shoulders dropped. He unclipped his Glock, handed it over handle first, then his badge. Without another word, he climbed into his cart and drove off toward the exit, tires spitting grass. Lieutenant Ellis turned to Tyrone, her tone completely different. "Petty Officer Brown, I'm sorry this happened on our watch. You're free to go, free to play if you still want. We'll handle this internally." Would you like to give a quick statement while it's fresh? Tyrone shook his head gently. I appreciate that, Lieutenant, but I think I'll head back. My family's waiting. Just know I'm not looking to make trouble. I just want the record straight. Ellis nodded, respect in her eyes. Understood, we'll be in touch if needed. Drive safe. Tyrone picked up his bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked back toward the parking lot. The sun was still bright, waves still crashing below the cliffs, but the morning felt heavier now. In the car, he sat for a moment, hands on the wheel, breathing the way he taught new swimmers, slow, controlled. Then he called Maria. Hey love, small situation at the course. Local sergeant got a little jumpy, but it's sorted. ID worked, I'm okay, just heading home early. Tell the kids daddy still loves them. Maria's voice tightened with worry, but Tyrone kept his tone light, reassuring, the same voice he used on rescues when people were panicking in the water. I promise I'm fine, these things happen, we handle it the right way. Next, he called his Coast Guard command duty officer in Alameda and reported the use of force, the false detention, the drawn weapon. The officer took notes, voice serious. We'll open a formal inquiry immediately. You did everything right, Tyrone, sit tight, we've got your back. Meanwhile, at the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, Bob Miller sat in the briefing room, writing his incident report. He typed carefully, subject made sudden movements toward waistband, refused initial commands, matched recent vandalism suspect profile. He left out how quickly the ID had cleared. He left out how calm Tyrone had stayed. He left out the gun coming all the way out. But the bodycam footage was already being pulled, and Lieutenant Ellis was watching it in the next room. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen an officer double down on a bad call even after the facts were staring them in the face. Type justice if you believe drawing a weapon on a compliant federal agent should end a career. Back at the Monterey County Sheriff's Office that same afternoon, Lieutenant Karen Ellis sat in the Watch Commander's office with the Watch Commander, Captain Daniel Ruiz, and the department's Internal Affairs Supervisor, Sergeant Maria Valdez. The bodycam footage from Bob Miller's camera played on a large monitor, crisp and unedited. The room was quiet except for the occasional click of the mouse as Ellis paused and rewound key moments. At 10:47 and 12 seconds, Bob's voice barking the first command. At 10:47 and 38 seconds, Tyrone's calm offer to let Bob retrieve the ID himself. At 10:48 and 5 seconds, the knee in the back, cuff snapping on. At 10:49 and 22 seconds, Bob pulling the Glock, muzzle down but clearly drawn. At 10:51 and 41 seconds, dispatch confirming the ID as valid, yet Bob hesitating another 12 seconds before holstering. Captain Ruiz leaned back, arms crossed. This isn't borderline. He drew on a compliant federal agent after ID was offered and before any threat materialized. We've got multiple civilian videos incoming 2, Pro Shop already forwarded 3. Sergeant Valdez flipped through the preliminary report. Miller's narrative says sudden movements toward waistband. Footage shows hands raised, slow kneel, no sudden anything. And the racial comment, people like you always have an excuse, that's on audio. Clear policy violation on bias-based policing. Ellis nodded. He's had 5 IA complaints in 12 years, 3 involved people of color, 2 settled out of court. Patterns there. We can't keep ignoring it. Ruiz rubbed his temples. Coast Guard is already involved. Their OIG liaison called an hour ago. They're opening a parallel inquiry under federal civil rights statutes. If we don't act decisively, this lands in DOJ's lap. They didn't need to say it out loud. One viral clip of a sheriff's sergeant drawing on a black Coast Guard hero at Pebble Beach could torch the department's reputation for years. By 4:00 p.m., Bob Miller was summoned back to headquarters. He walked in still in uniform, badge and gun already turned in earlier. Captain Ruiz met him in the hallway. Sergeant, effective immediately. You're suspended without pay pending full investigation. Turn over your department phone and vehicle keys. You'll be notified of the next steps. Bob's face went pale. Captain, I was acting on a vandalism report. He looked suspicious. Ruiz cut him off. Save it for the board. You drew your service weapon on a verified federal officer who was fully compliant. That's not suspicion, that's excessive force. Go home. Bob left without another word, shoulders slumped, the weight of the day finally hitting. Meanwhile, Tyrone arrived home in Oakland around 3:30 p.m. Maria met him at the door, eyes searching his face. Jamal and Aisha ran up, hugging his legs. Daddy, did you play golf? Aisha asked, holding up a crayon drawing of him swinging a club. Tyrone knelt, kissed her forehead. Not today, baby girl, but I met some interesting people. Tell you the story later. He looked at Maria over the kids' heads, a silent promise that he was truly okay. That evening, he sat with his command duty officer on a secure video call. Commander Elena Vasquez, a no-nonsense 22-year veteran, listened without interrupting as Tyrone recounted every detail. When he finished, she spoke firmly. You handled it, textbook petty officer. No escalation, full compliance, de-escalation from your side. We're filing the formal report to DHS Civil Rights and the DOJ. But more importantly, your promotion packet was already on my desk for Chief Petty Officer. This incident, it doesn't hurt it. If anything, it shows exactly why we need more leaders like you. Tyrone exhaled the first real relief of the day. Thank you, ma'am. I just didn't want this to reflect badly on the service. It won't, Vasquez said. It reflects badly on him. We've got your back. Over the next weeks, the internal investigation moved fast. Bob Miller's bodycam and civilian videos were reviewed frame by frame. Witnesses, the groundskeeper, pro shop manager, 3 golfers gave statements. All consistent, Tyrone calm, compliant, Bob aggressive, dismissive of proof. On August 2, 2021, the Monterey County Sheriff's Office held a closed disciplinary hearing. Bob appeared with union representation. He admitted under questioning that he may have misread the situation and should have verified the ID sooner. But he maintained the initial stop was justified. The board didn't buy it. Findings: sustained violations of use of force policy, failure to de-escalate bias-based policing, and improper display of firearm. Recommendation: termination. But the sheriff, facing public pressure and the threat of federal scrutiny, opted for a compromise. On August 15, Bob Miller was allowed to submit a voluntary resignation in lieu of firing. He signed the papers, collected unused vacation pay, and walked out quietly. No pension loss, he had 16 years in, but his law enforcement career was over in California. Future background checks would show the resignation under investigation. The department issued a short public statement. The Monterey County Sheriff's Office takes all use of force incidents seriously. Sergeant Miller is no longer employed. Additional training for all personnel has been implemented. Tyrone received a personal letter from the sheriff apologizing for the incident and offering to cover any counseling if needed. He declined the counseling but accepted the apology on behalf of anyone else this might happen to. By September, Tyrone's promotion to Chief Petty Officer was approved, effective October 1, 2021. The ceremony took place at Coast Guard Island in Alameda. Maria pinned the new anchors on his collar while Jamal and Aisha beamed in the front row. Commander Vasquez shook his hand. "You earned this twice over." Tyrone smiled, that same quiet, genuine smile that had carried him through storms at sea and one unfair morning on dry land. "Before I continue, have you ever seen someone lose their job over treating a person of color unfairly when the proof was right there? Share in the comments if a story like this has happened in your town or to someone close. Type justice if you believe resignation in lieu of firing is still too soft for drawing on a compliant federal agent. The quiet aftermath stretched into the fall of 2021. Tyrone returned to regular duty with the Coast Guard, now wearing the gold anchors of Chief Petty Officer on his collar. The promotion felt earned in more ways than one, not just from rescues and seizures at sea, but from the way he'd handled a moment that could have broken lesser men. On his first day back, the entire Pacific Area Rescue Swimmer team lined the pier at Alameda to salute him as he walked off the hello deck. No speeches, no fanfare, just quiet nods and handshakes. One young swimmer whispered, "That's how you stay cool, Chief." Tyrone just smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. "We all do what we have to when it counts." Maria noticed the change at home too. Tyrone was the same gentle dad reading bedtime stories to Aisha, shooting hoops with Jamal in the driveway, but there was a new layer of quiet resolve. He started mentoring more junior enlisted members off duty, sharing not just technical skills but the mental side. How to keep your head when authority turns hostile, how to document everything without emotion, how to turn a bad encounter into fuel for being better. "The uniform doesn't protect you from other uniforms," he told one group during an informal barbecue. "But character does." Back in Monterey County, the ripples from July 15 kept spreading, internally at least. The department rolled out mandatory 8-hour de-escalation and implicit bias training for every sworn officer. Lieutenant Karen Ellis was promoted to captain and put in charge of the new Community Trust Unit, tasked with reviewing every use of force incident involving civilians of color. The sheriff publicly committed $150,000 to community outreach programs in Oakland and Salinas, partnering with local veterans groups. A direct nod to the Coast Guard angle without ever naming Tyrone. Bob Miller, meanwhile, faded from public life. He moved to a small apartment in Salinas, took a job as a loss prevention supervisor at a big box store. The pay was half what he'd made as a sergeant, no gun, no badge, no overtime. Friends said he rarely talked about the incident, but when he did, it was always the same line. "I was just doing my job." He filed for early retirement from the county pension system at age 43, eligible because of his 16 years, and collected a modest monthly check. No criminal charges were ever filed. The Monterey County DA reviewed the case and declined to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence of criminal intent beyond policy violations. But the civil rights complaint Tyrone's command helped file with the Department of Justice lingered in the background. It never went to full litigation. The department settled quietly in early 2022 for $275,000, paid directly to Tyrone with no admission of wrongdoing on paper. He donated half to a scholarship fund for kids from Oakland who wanted to join the military. The money wasn't the point. For Tyrone, the real win was the letter he received from the Coast Guard Commandant in Washington, D.C., dated November 2021. It praised his exemplary composure under unwarranted duress and noted that his actions reflect the highest traditions of the service. Attached was a commendation ribbon he could add to his dress blues, the Coast Guard Achievement Medal with a special citation for civil rights advocacy in the face of adversity. By spring 2022, Tyrone was tapped to lead training sessions at the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. He flew east with Maria for a week, stood in front of classes of wide-eyed cadets, and told the Pebble Beach story without bitterness. "Power isn't the gun or the badge," he said. "It's the choice to use it right or to put it away when it's wrong. I chose calm, he chose escalation. One path builds trust, the other tears it down." The cadets listened in silence. When he finished, they stood and applauded, not the polite kind, but the kind that echoes off cinderblock walls. Back home, life settled into a new normal. Tyrone took up golf again, not at Pebble Beach, but at a public course near Oakland where the greens fees were affordable and the players came from every background. He played with Jamal on weekends, teaching him how to read putts and how to stay patient when a shot goes wrong. "Golf's like the ocean," he told his son. "You can't control the wind or the waves. You control your swing and your attitude." One Saturday in June 2023, while putting on the 9th green, Tyrone's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is LT. Ellis, now capped Ellis. Just wanted to say the department's new bias policy is named after your incident. Brown Protocol, mandatory ID verification before any restraint on uniformed federal personnel. Thought you should know. Thank you for your grace that day." Tyrone stared at the screen for a long moment, then showed it to Jamal. His son grinned. "Dad, you changed the rules." Tyrone pocketed the phone and lined up his putt. "We all change the rules when we choose right over easy." The ball rolled true, dropped in the cup with a soft clink. Before I continue, have you ever seen a single moment of standing your ground lead to real, lasting change in a system? Drop your thoughts in the comments, or share if something like this ever shifted policy where you live. Type "justice" if you believe a $275,000 settlement plus policy changes is fair accountability for what happened that morning. The text from Captain Ellis stayed with Tyrone long after that putt dropped clean into the cup. It was quiet proof that one calm morning on the Pebble Beach fairway had quietly rewritten rules for thousands of officers across California. In the 2 years that followed, Bob Miller tried to rebuild a life without the badge. He took the loss prevention supervisor job at the big box store in Salinas, working 12-hour shifts watching security cameras for shoplifters. The pay was less than half of what he earned as a sergeant, no overtime, no pension boost. By late 2022, he sold the house near Monterey and moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Fresno, 4 hours inland. Friends who stayed in touch said Bob rarely left the apartment except for work. He avoided any conversation about policing. In a single short interview with a Fresno newspaper in spring 2023, he offered only one sentence. "I made assumptions that day that I wish I could take back." No direct apology to Tyrone, no acknowledgement of the racial lens that shaped his reaction. He simply collected his $3,200 monthly pension check and kept his head down. His law enforcement career was finished at age 45. Tyrone's trajectory pointed straight upward. In January 2024, he was promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer and transferred to San Diego to lead a 25-person rescue swimmer detachment. His new citation package listed 47 lives saved at C+, exemplary leadership when confronted with unlawful authority. Maria and the kids moved south with him. Jamal, now 13, joined the Navy Junior ROTC at his middle school and wore his dad's old dress blues to uniform day. Aisha, 10, kept drawing rescue helicopters instead of golf courses. Family dinners were the same, Tyrone on the floor helping with homework, never raising his voice, always listening. The quiet systemic change was real. The Brown Protocol Captain Ellis had texted about became official policy across every California sheriff's office and police department by mid-May 2023. Any interaction with a uniformed federal officer required immediate ID verification before any physical restraint or weapon display. The Department of Homeland Security adopted core elements for all Coast Guard, CBP, and TSA field training nationwide. Departments reported a measurable drop in unnecessary escalations involving military personnel. In March 2023, the Monterey County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Coast Guard Pacific Area Command held a joint community accountability forum at the Pebble Beach Community Center. 80 local leaders, veterans, faith leaders, and officers filled the room with folding chairs. No cameras for national broadcast, just a simple podium and a microphone. Tyrone was invited to speak last. He stood in his freshly pressed dress blues, no notes, voice steady and warm as always. On July 15, 2021, I wasn't looking to make history. I was a husband, a father, and a Coast Guard rescue swimmer who just wanted 18 holes on the course I'd dreamed about since I was a kid. What happened wasn't about me personally. It was about that moment when fear and bias override training and basic respect. I chose to stay calm, to comply, to offer my ID without anger. That choice didn't just free me from handcuffs. It helped create the protocol that now protects every uniformed service member who comes after me. If my experience means one officer pauses, verifies, and chooses de-escalation instead of escalation, then every uncomfortable second on that grass was worth it. The room sat in complete silence for 3 full seconds. Then applause rolled through the space, not polite clapping, but the kind that comes from people who felt the weight of the story. Captain Ellis stepped forward and presented Tyrone with a framed copy of the new statewide policy, signed by the sheriff and the Coast Guard admiral. Deputies lined up to shake his hand. Young officers asked for selfies. Tyrone stayed until the last person left, answering every question with the same patient kindness that had defined his entire career. Nationwide, the picture is still sobering. Between 2020 and 2024, American taxpayers paid out more than $3.9 billion in documented settlements for police misconduct involving excessive force or unlawful detentions. Chicago alone spent $107.5 million in 2024. New York City's police department faced over $82 million that same year. Studies across multiple states show Black Americans are stopped by police 2 to 3 times more frequently than white Americans for identical behaviors, even when controlling for location and time of day. In one major California dataset, Black residents accounted for 16% of all stops while making up only 7% of the population. Use of force encounters follow the same pattern. Black individuals experience non-fatal force at nearly 3 times the rate of white individuals. Qualified immunity, the legal protection that shields officers from civil lawsuits, was invoked in more than 55 federal appeals between 2010 and 2020, roughly 500 cases every year, with plaintiffs prevailing in fewer than 2% of those challenges. These numbers aren't abstract. They represent families, careers, and trust broken one unnecessary stop at a time. Yet Tyrone Brown's story proves that one person choosing calm over rage and one department choosing reform over cover-up can shift the balance. Before we close this chapter, let me ask you, if you were face down on that fairway with cuffs on your wrists and a gun drawn for no reason, could you have stayed as composed as Tyrone? And what are you willing to do right now to make sure the next federal agent, the next veteran, the next father in uniform gets the respect and verification they deserve the first time? If these stories of quiet courage and hard-won accountability move you, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We bring you more every single week. Share this with one person who needs to hear it today. Type justice in the comments if you believe every officer, without exception, should verify official ID before any show of force. Comment below if you think it's time for real nationwide reform on qualified immunity and bias-based policing. See you in the next one.